One of the things that I like about off week when it comes to the Formula One race season is it gives us a chance to catch up on what's happening off of the track and talk about some of the things that are developing for the rest of the season and for everything that will happen in 2025 and 2026. Let's talk about Yuki Tsunoda. It seems as if he's going to stay at the RB team for the 2025 season, and that might actually be good for him considering that Honda isn't going to take over as a power unit provider for Aston Martin until 2026, and I can only imagine that once they settle in with the team in Silverstone, that they're going to push hard for a Japanese driver, and I think that he would be a great candidate to replace either Alonso should he retire at some point, or Lance Stroll if he ever truly gives up and walks away. The big news is the 2026 regulations are out, and it looks like the cars will get a little bit smaller and a little bit lighter. I don't think that fans are necessarily impressed with the amount of weight cut and the size contraction of the cars, but it's a step in the right direction. One of the big differences, though, that we're looking at is it seems like DRS is going to be gone. But what we are getting is a manual override mode, which I don't know, I have to look it up. It sounds a little bit like IndyCar, but I'm not quite sure we would categorize it as a boost. I personally have always thought that regulations should just be two-tiered. One is that there are a certain amount of safety requirements that must be in every car. And secondly, we should just create an invisible box and tell every team, as long as the specs of your car are inside of this visible box, you're within regulations. And that should be pretty much it. Next up, I want to talk about Carlos Sainz. I don't know what's going on with him. He tried to get into a Mercedes seat for a short-term contract. That didn't work out because Mercedes is looking to the future with a younger driver in Kimi Antonelli. He also reached out to Red Bull to see if maybe he could replace either Verstappen should he make a surprise move to Mercedes, or even Sergio Perez, who seemed like he could be under threat to be moved out of the team, but it turns out that's not the case. So Sainz, who's being gifted what people are kind of whispering is an incredible contract from Audi to join the team, it's just simply hesitant. Maybe it's because of the association to Sauber, or perhaps having to sit in a Sauber car for the 2025 year. Also, he now has prospects at Williams, which also sounds like a backmarker team, but there seems to be a lot of faith in the paddock about what James Vowles is doing with the team. Also, he would have a really solid teammate in Alex Albon. We'd be able to get a good measure on him. But will Williams be able to make a McLaren-like resurgence towards the front of the grid? If that were the case, that would be really interesting for all of F1. Also, it looks like Liam Lawson is screwed. I really thought he should get an RBC. If Yuki was leaving, that could be his seat. I don't know if Daniel deserves to necessarily be there. I'm a huge fan of him. He's had a lot of ups and downs, and sometimes he sounds like the McLaren driver that we've recently known. Sometimes he performs like the guy that should be in a Red Bull seat. I don't know what to say. Liam Lawson is a good driver. He outqualified the entire Red Bull team in Singapore when he was given basically very little notice to jump in a car and go. And I don't see how he doesn't have the talent that justifies, or the skill that justifies his being on the grid. He belongs on the grid. I don't know how he gets on the grid. I don't know how other teams are planning their futures, but Ferrari is being very vocal about their development program should be pushing Red Bull and McLaren for the Constructors' Championship and maybe an individual Drivers' Championship too. I mentioned before Sergio Perez. It looks like he's here to stay. Carlos Sainz may have underestimated his position. Sergio Perez, if you look it up, I'll try to post it here in this video, he has an incredible amount of sponsors who are backing him to the point where it would be silly for an F1 team not to take him onto their squad. That if you were to deny him a seat, it would just be financial malpractice. And last but not least, I just want to mention Jack Doohan. He is doing a free practice 1 in place of Esteban Ocon, who is out. I really want Jack Doohan to get the seat. He's been very good at representing the team up and down the paddock on television and media. More so than anything else, I think it's really important for F2 to remain a pipeline for F1 drivers. I don't want to see a whole generation of F2 drivers not get a chance to compete in F1 fairly. So I'm rooting for him to do well during free practice 1 and perhaps get a shot on the Alpine team. That's pretty much it I wanted to talk about. Just those few things, since that's what's swirling around the F1 world. I hope you guys are having an awesome day, and I'll see you at the Canadian GP.